Good evening, everybody. Thank you for gathering together for the next installment of the Blessed Order. I'm looking at the roll sheet from the first week that we did this, and it's remained relatively consistent. We've only lost a couple of people, and we've gained some, so it's holding about even. So God bless you guys. So last week, our topic was masculinity and the Orthodox Christian understanding of masculinity, what it is, what it means. I know that in the time since we had that class, more people had questions or things that maybe they wanted to talk about related to that topic. So I put it to you right here. What questions or just comments or things that you think are worthy of note from last time? Yes, sir.
It occurred to me that, to my knowledge, all the angels that appear in the Bible by name, who are like personally identified, are all male. They're all referred to as he.
Yes, sir.
If that's right.
Yes, sir.
Is the implication that all angels are masculine in form, or at least the ones that appear, or is that not really correct to identify those categories to them?
Well,
are there feminine angels, for instance?
No, actually there aren't. That is quite deliberate. They're referred to as the sons of God, not as the children. That wording is quite deliberate within the scriptures. They are the sons of God. They are seen as male. That they are seen as male. I don't think it's helpful to delve deeper into that and say do they I won't get into that. But it is significant that they are male. Well, I will say, with regard to the phenomenon of the Nephilim, this is how that is a thing. The fact that that the angels are male. And that, yes, they aren't able to cohabit with women, in the way that, a human man and a human woman do. It has to be through this particularly hideous kind of religious ritual, but all the same, it does happen, So yes, the angels are indeed male. It's a good question. What else?
I had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Last week when we talked about when God created Eve, it was like splitting apart of Adam. So does that mean that there was like a physical change in Adam from before he got split to after? Or like to him, would he have been like the exact same?
The indication of the flesh being sealed up in his side is that he is he's made whole. He hasn't. He's not going to go about hobbled in any way, if that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, good question. Very good question. See, these are questions you kind of wish you could have asked in Sunday school when you were a kid, or maybe not, I don't know. What else?
So last time we were talking about masculine traits and the difference between sort of popular culture perception of masculinity versus the Orthodox understanding. So even some of those things like strength or authority are not necessarily masculine.
Correct.
And so in that sense, I think before my kind of understanding was that men mostly have masculine traits, but basically it isn't a dichotomy.
Mm-hmm.
But because it's a little more nuanced. It's not, you know, the cultural perception. It does kind of seem that, you know, masculine traits are for the male, feminine traits are for the female.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
correct?
Yeah, yeah. And we're going to be talking about this very thing today.
Related to that, I have a question. How should a man deal with women who are wrongly animated by masculine traits like authority or strength or
Well, the thing to do is for him to put his hands on his hips and say, "Listen to me, Missy." Yeah. I don't know who you think you are. No, that is not the thing to do. I don't know that you really need to do anything. I mean, you know, if you know you think that would help at all, it's more like
easy.
it's more likely, you know, if you're to address that, you know, a woman acting too masculine, if you are to address that, you're more likely to create more conflict than anything. You know, the thing really to do is to make the sign of the cross. And to pray for, you know, the dear woman, you know, and that's really kind of it, you know. All right, those are good questions. What else? What else we got? Are we ready to delve into the feminine? Okay. So at the beginning of class last week, I asked you guys to give me some examples of masculinity, like in terms of person or actions, and these were, you know, kind of pertaining to the culture, as it were. So now I'm going to ask us to do this again, okay? Only in this instance, I want you to give me examples of femininity, but they have to be contemporary examples. That is, either people who are feminine or traits that are feminine. What do we, if we're thinking culturally, what do we think of whenever we think of femininity? And I am being specific, like with regards to our culture, what do we think of femininity?
Do you mean stereotypically?
Possibly, yes, sir.
False idea of femininity?
False ideas of femininity are fine, yes.
I think that gracefulness is still holy. You know, even if our in our further society, I think gracefulness is a feminine trait. That's
Could you define gracefulness for me?
gracefulness is somebody who tries to be pleasing aesthetically and behaviorally.
Okay. So behaviorally, aesthetically, attempts to be pleasing. Perhaps not overbearing, but, you know, pleasing. Okay. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Independence has become a modern symbol of femininity.
Okay. All right. Independence has become one of femininity, which is interesting. We'll come to that. What else?
Femininity is falsely promoted as some sort of weakness or being less than right now.
Okay. I'm happy that you kind of cut to the chase, because we were all kind of having trouble here. You guys are struggling to think of a contemporary example of femininity, because there aren't any. Okay? All right?
Not Beyonce.
Yeah. No. Our culture, modern Western culture in the 21st century, despises femininity positively. Our culture despises femininity, thinks of it, as you said, as weak, thinks of it as inferior, thinks of it as less than. And so, when we have examples of women within the culture who are to be looked up to, we wind up getting traits like independence. Well, that's not feminine. To be perfectly fair, neither is it masculine. A man needs a woman needs a man. But it was impossible for you to think of examples because the culture just despises femininity, okay? Within the culture, nobody despises femininity more than second and third wave feminists. And we've seen this movement within popular culture. Okay, now please don't misunderstand me, okay? I'm about to bring up examples that came from the 1950s and the 1960s. This does not mean I'm going back to a time that was in any way better or superior or somehow more wholesome. I'm not doing that. That's not what's going on. I'm pointing to a time when the feminine was still in some way thought of as good. Okay, but when we look at some of the women in popular culture, like Donna Reed, okay, we see Donna Reed, and what is she like? What is she like? Does anybody remember the Donna Reed show? You guys are all so young.
Stereotype of the pearls while vacuuming. I think that came from them, didn't it?
Yeah, the post-world.
I watched it, but
Yeah. I don't know. I think Donna Reed was my first crush. Like when I was 7 years old, I would just watch that show every day. I was like, wow, Donna Reed's really great. But kind of she's this great mom, and this this word of wisdom for her kids. She does all the cooking and everything, and she still looks beautiful, and she's very maternal, all of those things, and she and that is held up as the good. Okay, now there are all kinds of unsavory things happening in the 1950s. Okay, so it's not that, that's a time when it was better. No, the 1950s are a time when the wheels are falling off. It's just now here the wheels have fallen off, and, and the engine is locked up, and, what are we going to do? So that's why I bring up that example, okay? If we look to, so if we look to our culture, we don't have solid views regarding femininity. As I said last week, that the sexual revolution begins in the 1950s, and when it starts, at first it's an entirely male-led phenomenon. It's men who are leading the charge. Men like Hugh Hefner, who, he by no means starts the sexual revolution, but he definitely popularizes and capitalizes upon it. The idea that, a man should be free from family, free from, a woman, that sex should be free from marriage and free from procreation, and he should be able to focus on his career, and he should be able to bed whichever women he wants to be able to. So that's the beginning of the sexual revolution, and notions of femininity we see some beginning to alter. That is, according to a man's taste. Marilyn Monroe is invented in the 1950s. Okay, and she's supposed to be really everything that this kind of man would want. You know, indeed, and indeed, other men are, called upon to want this for themselves. So, the 1960s come along with the sexual revolution kind of unfolding into the 1970s. And the second wave feminists see what is going on with men who have all of this independence, all of this freedom. You know, they're not hindered by families. They're not held back in any way by marriage or by reproduction. They're able to focus upon their careers. And even though women like, Gloria Steinem would consider men kind of the mental and moral equivalent of algae, she would come to say to women that women should want the same thing that these men want. So she takes for her model of masculinity not a proper view of masculinity, not a sound view, but Hugh Hefner's view of masculinity. They take Hugh Hefner's view of what it is to be a man and hold it up to women and say, this is what women should want. Women should want this too. Women should want a career. Women should want to not be married. Women should be able to have sex with as many men as they want and not worry about, reproduction or anything like that. Okay? Culturally, the limelight is given to these women in the late 1960s, early 1970s. And everyone has this idea that, the country is having to reckon with, treating women equally and, elevating women. None of that was really the case. It was all about, at least from a political standpoint, getting women in the workforce to support our ever-expanding economy. The only way we're going to be able to keep this growing and growing and growing is if the women come out of the home and into the workforce. Okay? And we can throw them a bone. We can give equal pay. But what we value is work. We don't value women. And we don't value families. How do we see this? Roe versus Wade, 1973. Given the force of law, a woman can get rid of her children. She can kill her children, and there won't be a court in the land that will prosecute her for that. And it's not about her rights. It's not about her equality to a man. It's about keeping her in the workforce. Because maternity leave, gee whiz, that's expensive. It's easier to just kill it. So we see that our culture, that this is what our culture thinks of the feminine. And the idea for a woman, if a woman is to be fulfilled, is that she basically has to become a man. Okay, think of all the action movies with women who can really kick ass, A woman gets to be an honorary man. That is, if she is to have any kind of fulfillment. That is what is held up as good. And simultaneously, while masculinity is being kind of put upon women to make them more perfect, it is simultaneously being stripped from men. And men are being neutered, not feminized, neutered, made into just a placeholder. So our culture, which worships masculinity, has decided that it's best to take it away from men, give it to women, and we'll all live happily ever after. That is profoundly sick. So I ask you now, beloved, let's come to our own tradition. Within our tradition, okay, what are great examples of femininity, both persons and characteristics? What do we have? The Theotokos, the most powerful woman in the universe. We have the Theotokos, an ever Virgin Mary. Absolutely. What else?
I would think like a quality would be like nurturing.
Nurturing. What could you tell me about nurturing? What does nurturing entail?
Nurturing would be, as the man is supposed to be the Christ role within the marriage, then the woman is supposed to be nurturing the children and instilling kind of those qualities in them. That she, kind of the order of things.
Yes, sir. Okay. What else?
We have a wide variety of, in particular, virgin martyrs, who I think, of course, in the modern day we have the idea of the strong woman, but not in a feminine way. But
Right.
the virgin martyrs of the church are sort of showing a sort of uniquely feminine strength in the face of such adversities.
Could you talk about that a little bit? Because that's actually very important.
It's kind of difficult to define. Like, it's more of a strength of, it's not the masculine strength of conquest, but it's like the strength of protection or preservation, maybe.
Okay. Yes.
They're also, I can't remember any by name off the top of my head, but we also have married women martyrs who had children, for instance, and went to great lengths to protect them.
Mm-hmm. Right, and to protect them not from death, but from spiritual death. Absolutely. Okay. Yes. Absolutely. And both examples, the virgin martyrs and the married women martyrs, shine in this particular regard. Absolutely. What if we're thinking about traits? Nurturing was mentioned. What else?
Meekness and self-control.
Self-control. Excellent. Okay, this is seen as how could we say this is seen kind of as a feminine trait?
I just remember that St. John Chrysostom said that women are superior to men in their ability to control their anger, and that they should do that if a man becomes angry.
Right.
Exercise their strength in that way.
Right. And that is true. That is true. Absolutely.
Trustfulness and faithfulness. Actually, this is something where my wife is always better than me. Actually, like, for example, when we have some problems and I start to worry, maybe we can't meet some ends or something, she never worries. She says, she trusts in me that I can do it, or she trusts in actually God that can provide, and she has.
Okay. Absolutely. Let's look at some symbols within history, going kind of broad, going beyond simply the our Orthodox tradition and the understanding of the feminine. But let's look at some universal symbols. One of those is the womb itself. We spoke last week about how the phallus is, first and foremost, a masculine symbol. But the womb is very much a feminine symbol. One related to growth, growth and protection. Interestingly enough, blood is looked upon as feminine. Blood is looked upon as feminine in the pre-modern anthropology and kind of understanding of the mechanics of sex. The belief was that a child comes about through a man's seed and a woman's blood. And so blood itself is seen as a feminine symbol. Soil is seen as a feminine symbol. The earth itself is seen as a feminine symbol. While heaven is seen as masculine, the earth and soil are seen as feminine. For the sake of fecundity, always bringing forth life. Okay, without the soil, without the earth, life is not going to come about. We've talked about how it was mentioned earlier how the feminine is the nurturing principle. Okay, excuse me. It is likewise the receptive principle, whereas the masculine is considered the active principle. And the genitive principle, the feminine is the receptive and the nurturing. Okay? Notice I said receptive and not passive. That is just kind of letting the masculine do whatever it wants to do. No, it is receptive. Okay? Receiving what the masculine principle gives and taking care of that. Nurturing, taking care. The maternal principle. The feminine is the maternal principle. Okay? Being a mother. And in each of these, it's important for us to remember that there is real power. Like we said, our culture looks upon the feminine as weak, as powerless, as something to be overcome. But each of these aspects has a power within it. We can see this in the dynamic in history between the king and the king's mother. And this is something that is near universal across cultures. Okay, tell me about the king. Who is the king? Who's the king?
Jesus Christ.
Well, we can cut right to the chase. Yes, the Lord Jesus Christ. He has lesser images in other kings of other kingdoms. Okay, but the one who sits on the throne, Okay, the one who oversees all things and has lordship over all things. The one who is wise. The one who has the strength to govern. The one who has the ability to protect his people. This is the King, and most perfectly the Lord Jesus Christ. But we do not get the King without the King's mother. So while only a king can rule a kingdom, only a woman can make a king. Now, I just need you to think about that for a second. Because if we think of the king as great, those qualities that make him great are shaped within him, some of them imparted to him by his mother. She's the one who nursed him, even when he was colicky in the middle of the night. She's the one who changed his diapers. She's the one who washed him. She's the one who scolded him when he was getting into danger. She's the one who taught him how to do, what to do and what not to do. So anything that he has that is good and worth praising comes from her. And that is the authority of the feminine. The power of the feminine to shape personhood itself. The masculine gives the seed. That doesn't particularly take a lot of effort. But the feminine takes that seed, nurtures that seed till it grows that child, teaches, shapes that child. That is a picture of feminine authority. Likewise, with regard to a woman's husband, I was thinking here within the blessed order that the woman is taken from where?
Man.
She's taken from man. Which part of man? Okay, his side. She is not taken from his head, so she is not above him. She is not taken from his foot, so she is not below him. She is taken from his side, so she is equal to him in the blessed order. She is his partner. She holds him up, lifts him up. As he seeks to guide the family. All right, now I've talked quite a bit here. I will now ask, I'm going to pause right here. Are there questions or comments? Have I said something terribly offensive?
I do want to comment. I definitely see that the women for femininity give it's a different type of power, and because I just recently started like gardening,
Uh-huh.
and when you plant a seed, you have to, what I would use the word nurture. You have to water it. You have to, as it starts to grow, you prune it, and in the end, you get fruit. You get,
Mm-hmm.
the full product.
Right.
Of what it's meant to be. And so, I mean, the woman is built to nurture because she has breasts to breastfeed, and the child will die if
Mm-hmm.
she just didn't do what
Right.
she's, built to do, which is, to grow the child. So, anyway, so I just think that it's very powerful. But women's power is different than men's.
Right. Well, and like you said, it is built into her very body. The breasts for nursing children, the womb for for growing children. It is in the very framework of her body. It's there, and so well, what is a woman? Well, this is a woman. All right, I'm sorry. All right. Questions, comments?
You mentioned the relationship between a king and his mother, but also in a man's life, you start building your family, and then you start seeing some territoriality between your mother and your spouse.
Right.
And sometimes a man can be in the middle.
Yes.
And it can be a very hard thing because actually the man sees clearly the distinction.
Yeah.
Appears actually it's not that clear outside between the mother and the wife.
Well, this is one of the reasons. This is, I'm not saying that this is the sole purpose behind this verse, but this is one of the shades of meaning that for this cause a man will leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and the two of them shall become one flesh. That is, when that happens, okay, he is not beholden to his parents as their child. That is, as the one who is under authority. He's no longer under authority when that happens. Now, because he is joined to his wife, his responsibility is to her, and he needs to obey her. She needs to obey him. It is a mutual obedience. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Doesn't make it any easier. It just what it means is that it's on the part of the man to always side with his wife. Yeah, say, well, that's swell, Mom. Okay, but I have to do right by my wife. And that's that. You don't have to like it. But that's the way that it is. So, what else?
So in the same way that, sinful nature, modernity, all this, satanic sort of ideas. They pervert the masculine into, like for example, what happened with the sexual revolution, completely false ideas of masculinity. It seems that the same thing has happened with femininity, or even symbols that are feminine are kind of perverted in our modern culture.
Could you give maybe an example?
I mean, objectification, all that.
Objectification, yes. This is, one of the aspects of the feminine is that the feminine is intrinsically pleasing to the masculine, aesthetically. That the man is instantly drawn to a woman just based on what she looks like. Okay, he doesn't have any idea if she's nuts. Okay, he doesn't have any idea if she has a personality disorder. He doesn't have any idea if she's a moron, and she's just going to make his life difficult. All he cares about is that hourglass figure, and that's it, and that's all. Okay. It's very immediate. Women are not shallow as men in that regard. I'm not saying that there aren't any shallow women. There definitely are. But on the whole, there's a little more depth than just the woman going after a man just based on what he looks like. I won't say anymore. No, I won't. The ability of the feminine to appeal to the masculine, is probably kind of the only natural aspect that's kind of left and held on to culturally, and thought of as feminine. Well, if a woman can be sexualized, if she can be made to look appealing, then she should do that. That's kind of the one feminine thing that the culture kind of wants to hold on to. Okay, but again, to what end? And is that really? Gee whiz, is that really something that's fundamental to women, or is it more catering to the masculine? Okay, if a woman dresses in a sexually provocative way, okay, why is she doing that? To draw attention to herself. Why draw attention to herself?
That's a position of power that she has over the men.
Okay.
Society
Oh.
that now.
Okay. Yes. And that is thought of as power, empowering. The ability of a woman to kind of bring a man to heel based on what she looks like. All right, that is seen as powerful, and it is seen as powerful within that whole dynamic of the will to power. Using the Nietzschean the Nietzschean dialectic of the will to power. And that is seen as a good thing. All right.
I remember I was reading James Dobson, and he called this stage of feminism in which it was like objectifying and exacerbating the looks of the feminine, called it like the period of bimboification. So,
Could you say that again?
like bimboification.
Oh, bimboification.
That's how he was calling it. It's like
Well, that's an interesting word.
it's, and I think we're past that stage now. Actually, if you look at the present day feminists, like they don't bring that image anymore. Actually, it's
Right.
like, the image that they put now. Actually, it's an ugly image.
Yes, it is. Well, and herein is one of the stark differences between second wave feminism and third wave feminism. Because the second wave feminists were pretty. Gloria Steinem was pretty. This morbidly obese crowd, with the purple and pink hair. Yeah, it's just like, I'm sorry. But I'm not saying that to be vicious. I'm not saying that to kind of gotcha. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm saying is there's a different set of values there, even and again. Holding on to the epithet feminist, particularly for the third wavers, is the most curious phenomenon that I can really fathom. Because this is the crowd that will ask, well, what is a woman? It's like, why are you a feminist? And that's the crowd that is really given grief to kind of more of the second wave type feminists, who they call the TERFs, the trans exclusionary radical feminists, as if they're fascists or something. And it's just like, no, they're just saying that you're if you're not biologically female, you are not a woman. That's all they're saying. It's a mess. Okay, but we see that the principle of modernity is being applied here, and that with the passage of time, all it does is break apart into smaller and smaller bits. Okay, so modernity came for women, seeking to uproot them from their families, seeking to uproot them from their husbands and their children. Okay, now it's seeking to uproot them from their femininity, seeking to uproot them from their bodies. It's madness, but that's what it does.
Father, do you think that when the Protestant movement came around and Mary's ever virginity started to slowly, I know some of the early Protestants would say that she was.
Yes, sir.
It just is now no longer at all accepted. Do you think that gave rise to this spirit that's driving kind of this, living loose, not having, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know that I would say that necessarily. I think what the culprit really is that tendency within Protestantism, because the seeds of modernity, remember, being a crisis of authority at its heart, the seeds of modernity are really sown with the Reformation. That question, who are you to tell me, the reformers are asking the Church of Rome, well, who are you to tell me about God? And it's just, I would say that it has to do more with that trajectory than anything else. And anything that it touches, it breaks apart. Okay? broke apart Europe. It broke apart the world. The Protestants, asking, the church, well, who are you to tell me about God? And then the Enlightenment philosophers asking God, well, who are you to tell me how to live? And the king, well, who are you to govern me? And it just keeps going. It keeps going. It keeps going. It keeps going. All it does is break apart. And I would really kind of lay the blame at modernity, more than anything. Yes, sir.
So this is sort of a complicated question, but since we bring up sort of in modernity, kind of what is considered the ideal male and female qualities have sort of been swapped, or at least masculinity has been removed from the man and femininity from the woman. It seems like kind of the logical conclusion of that we're seeing now is the actual physical phenomenon of transgenderism.
Right.
And it's occurred to me, like, I originally thought of that as just sort of a new, to put it as Nikola Tesla would, modern horror beyond our comprehension. But it seems like, or man-made horrors beyond our comprehension.
Man-made horrors beyond our comprehension.
I've seen some insinuations in, like, ancient societies that there's things like essentially like ritual cross-dressing and things like that. Mm-hmm. There's in like Kabbalah, I think there's the idea of the divine androgyne, where like basically Adam and Eve sort of reunite into like an androgynous entity. And I think like even Christ makes an insinuation about Herod at one point in the New Testament, maybe is to that effect.
Christ kind of he kind of calls Herod a cross-dressing hooker. That gets covered up in the English translation, by the way. But I mean, our Lord Jesus Christ has a sharp tongue, and that's something that was kind of covered up.
Yeah. Well, I guess I don't know if that in that case was meant rhetorically or as literally an insinuation that he's participating in those kind of rights, possibly. But anyway, I guess my general question is, like, this phenomenon that we see today of, like, transgenderism more broadly, like, as a concept, like, how far back does that go? Because it seems like there are actually, like, this is, like, as sort of like an occult practice, this seems to have, like, very, very early roots.
Yes, absolutely. The appropriation of the feminine by the masculine, or the appropriation of the masculine by the feminine. Yeah, it's as old as the hills. It is. What it is not is an expression of, the thousands and thousands of genders that there supposedly are. What it is playing with the idea of the fluidity of the binary, because that's all there is, and that's all there ever was. And again, the relation to occult practice, which the occult is always seeking power for oneself, and there's the tacit recognition within the occult that masculinity and femininity have powers inherent to them. And that what certain occult practice is aimed at is simply appropriating that for oneself. There are plenty of man-woman characters in pagan stories. Absolutely. I mean, the prophet Tiresias, who has been both man and woman, and has experienced sex as both man and woman. That's not new. I would say this new kind of desire for disembodiment, it is, more than anything, I mean, of course, it is of the spirit of Antichrist, but more than anything, it is a hatred of the image of God. It is a hatred of the human person. And it does not originate with human beings. It originates with demonic powers. So, does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I know I forget what culture, but there was a culture that a woman, if her father had no son, she could pretend to be a man to carry on his legacy.
Yes.
Would that fall into the category of hating the image of God, or just carrying on her father's line?
I think that's just maybe another case of the appropriation of the masculine, for the sake of continuing her father's line. I would say also, perhaps possibly a hatred of the feminine. Kind of not appreciating her feminine power and authority, as a potential, wife and mother, just like, no, you're going to be my son, you're going to be my son for me, even though you're not a son. It's not good. It's not good, but it's part of that continuum of demonic ideas, so.
It's interesting because in the Romanian language, there's different words. For example, in English, when I say somebody is getting married, it applies for both women and men.
Right.
In Romania, we have a different word actually when a woman gets married from when a man gets married.
Right.
It's like, and they can't be the same.
No. No, they can't, because they're not.
Chinese is like that too. It's like for a bride, it's like to be chosen, and then for a husband, or like a bride, it is married, and the husband chooses the wife. Something like that.
Right. It's there in the language. Yeah. I can see there are a lot of thoughts swimming around in your heads, and some of you are just kind of too shy. Don't be shy. Yes, sir.
So the question of how feminism is sneaking into orthodoxy.
Yes, sir.
There are some fringe ideas that misconstrue or misunderstand the office of priesthood.
Yes, sir.
And so it's this idea that maybe the priest is like a CEO, something to be aspired to.
Sure.
And surely a woman would want to aspire to that life of being a peasant as well.
Right.
And that's what I mean by the misconstrue, because my understanding of the priesthood is that of a shepherd, and the shepherd is usually the underpaid, indentured servant of the master who places the sheep above himself.
Well, more than that, the priesthood is a function of fatherhood, exclusively. It is seen as a bullet point on the list of the things that a father does, and at the top of that is priesthood. He is to mediate, between the world that he's been given charge over. He is to intercede with the deity on behalf of his family. He is tasked with doing that, and because the Orthodox Church, has always had this understanding of priesthood. When the question, well, why can't women be priests? When that first got asked to us, the question didn't make any sense. It's like, well, why can't a woman be a father? That's what it sounded like to us. It's like, what do you mean, why can't a woman be a father? Because she can be a mother, A woman can't be a father. Okay, priesthood is bound up with maleness, and indeed, I mean, it's inescapable. We were all born in the modern era. We've been raised as modern people. We think as modern people. We can't help that, and so whatever aspects of, modernity have laid, heavily upon our consciousness, and which we have perhaps internalized, those things are going to find their way into the church. Well, I think we should do this. Well, I think we should do this. Reform, change, and whatnot. It's, and again, like I say, it's happened. It's happened to all of us. What we need, as Orthodox Christians, is to be transformed through the renewal of our minds. We need transformation. Okay, the church doesn't need to change for us. We need to change for the church. That's our lot. Because within the church is that blessed order. We're seeking to live within that blessed order. To have our lives ordered not arbitrarily by man-made rules, not by human tyranny, not by neuroses or anything like that, but to be ordered by grace. That's what we're seeking. And the more and more our lives are ordered by grace, the more and more we live in that blessed order. We live as we are meant to live. So the beauty of the Orthodox Christian understanding of the kingdom of heaven is that we have to be living it here, now. It's not just for then, the hereafter. If we want to enter it in the age to come, we have to be about the business of living in it in this age. All right, as we approach the end of our hour, other questions or comments?
So you said that at the beginning, if I understood correctly, that the problems with how we've appropriated femininity and masculinity and taking them away stemmed from the sexual revolution from the 50s?
Yes, ma'am.
So I've seen a lot of that throughout history in ancient times.
Yes.
Do you think it's different what we're seeing today?
No, ma'am. I think there have, well, actually, and this is historically demonstrable, but there have actually been a number of sexual revolutions throughout history in different historical contexts. Across cultures. When I refer to, the sexual revolution, I'm referring to ours here in the West. But throughout history, there have been multiple sexual revolutions, each one culminating in human disaster. Each one, being really grievous and causing a great deal of suffering. I don't see that this one is markedly different from any of those. Just to give an example of a sexual revolution that the after effects of which were actually recorded in the Old Testament. Okay, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah had experienced a sexual revolution. Okay, and some people are laughing. I'm dead serious. They had experienced a sexual revolution. Okay. To the point that homosexual activity, at least among the men, was commonplace. not thought of as taboo at all. You would see this. You would see this also. I mean, among the ancient Greeks, for whom women weren't even sex symbols. I need you to think about that. I mean, boys were sex symbols for them. So yeah, there have been quite a few through history. We are currently suffering through one, and if we do not change course, it's not likely to turn out well. So,
do you think all societies undergo at some point sexual evolution?
I think it's a part of the dynamic of human civilization. I really do. With regard to times of prosperity, creating weak people. There being plenty, times of plenty, have a tendency to produce people who are lazier and weaker, and a little less steadfast in certain things. I do think it's kind of an unfortunate but natural movement through human history. Yes, ma'am.
Does that lead directly to a civilization's downfall?
Yes. Yes, it does. I'm sorry to say it does. Well, with that,
Thanks, cheering.
Debbie Downer, that's me. So it's official. I can't have children. I'm sorry. We can bleep that on the West Coast. Oh, yes, sir.
What do you think that like the result of what's going on right now and how it's being encouraged and pushed so strongly for the transgenderism and but then you do see some that were going through the process who then realize that, hey, I was being lied to. This is
right,
and I'm glad I didn't go through fully with it. Like, do you think this is going to lead to just a lot more, chaos in the future, or are people going to be held responsible for any of this?
Yes.
I know they will be by God. God will hold.
It's going to lead to more chaos. If such a thing were even imaginable, but it is going to lead to more chaos. An entire generation of children. Who have been affected by this. I mean, people's lives are being ruined actively right now. There's a reason why Johns Hopkins Hospital stopped performing sexual reassignment surgery. Back in the 1960s, they were the trailblazer. They were the first hospital to begin doing that particular kind of surgery. But what they did was they did their research. They followed up with everybody, and they came to see that it was not rendering the therapeutic value they thought that it would. They found that the people who underwent the procedure, apart from the ones who committed suicide, so we can definitely count them as people who regretted it. There are those who lived and said they regretted it. And each one of them continued to have struggles and problems in interpersonal relationships, problems with depression, problems with mental health in general. Okay, every one of them was mentally ill. There was not a mentally sound person who said, I'm actually a woman. Could you do this surgery for me? It just was not the case. Okay, and so they stopped performing the surgery. Yeah, and so what do we have ahead of us? With all of these children who have been mutilated. you know, when they grow up. I mean, and I pray that they grow up. Not all of them are likely to. You know, it's just it's incredibly sad. You know, and of course the way that the the way that the camp who promotes this madness frames it is that they have all these mental problems because they are being bullied, because of the societal pressure against them. You turn on the television, you watch movies, you will not find a more welcoming environment for this kind of thing, okay? You meet people on the street, even people who think that the phenomenon is horrible, well, they're not being horrible to people who struggle with this. They're not, okay? So that's not the problem. Okay, the problem is that they are unwell in the first place, and God bless them. I mean, because how can you live in the modern world and be unaffected and have your mind completely intact? It's been designed to drive people insane.
There's so much absurdity. Like about a couple of years ago, I read on the news, like before saying a prayer, and actually they were concluding like with a man and a woman.
Say that again?
So instead of saying amen,
Uh-huh.
end of the prayer.
Oh yes, that guy was an idiot. Yeah. There's a lot of idiocy going on with this. I'm like, oh wow, yeah. Lord have mercy. All right. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Trying to figure out how to frame this question, but like in response to all of this, like just destruction that's happening because of the dysfunction and sin, like what should we do? Like, is there anything that we could be doing more that's like, I don't know, obviously our own theosis. But I guess my question is, like, I guess for myself, I'm just trying to figure out, like, my age, I'm 53, like, I have lived longer behind me than what I have ahead of me, probably.
You sure about that?
Maybe, I don't know. God knows. But I don't know what to do with, like, I just want to make this last little, like, decades of my life be on task for the Lord. I don't want to be, like, chasing money and chasing worldly values, and I find myself like daily feeling kind of confused about it.
Sure. Really the thing for us to do is to do what Christ has commanded us to do. To love every single person he puts in our path. That barista at Starbucks, who is dressed up like a woman and looks like he's having a really crummy day. You be kind to him. You show love to him. You let him know that he is loved. You take interest in him. How can I pray for you? It's okay. Sometimes people say, oh, don't worry about it. But most people give you an answer. Okay? Do that. Okay? That's the thing to do. Show love wherever you go. This is how the kingdom of heaven grows. All right? And we're receiving people who have come away from, the madness of the sexual revolution, seriously, coming out of the gay lifestyle, coming away from profligacy, coming away from, transgenderism. There are people who are coming away from that. So if we do what we have been commanded to do, I think that will be sufficient. I really do. The thing is so often we don't want to do what we've been called to do. There's always that tension. We believe, but we feel like it's so hard. We feel like it's so hard. To secure against that, say your prayers every day, especially when you don't feel like it. People have said so many times in my life, well, all you can do is pray. Like, you're farting in the wind or something. Like that's nothing, all you can do is pray. It's like, no. When you pray, you are interacting with God and you are receiving grace, His uncreated energy, His fire. You're covered in fire when you're praying. The devil can't touch you if that's happening. So he has to resort to other methods. He has to shoot arrows at you from the side, okay? And it'll come in the form of thoughts, sometimes just mundane thoughts. You got that thing later on, Did you turn off the stove? Oh man, that really awful thing you did yesterday, and you think you can stand up here and pray like that? You think this is doing any good, honestly? Stop me if you've never heard any of these. Right. He wants you to stop. Because as long as you're doing this, you're fighting. You're fighting him and his kingdom of madness. You're fighting. He wants you to stop. He wants you to grow cold. He wants you to be unloving. So keep that fire going by your daily prayers, okay? It sounds simple. Pray every day, okay? But when you want to go to pray, okay, what happens? As soon as you think you've got the thought you need to pray, what comes to your mind? Other things. Other things I got to do. Oh, you get 10 different things you got to do instead. Why? I'll tell you why. Because the devil doesn't want you to pray. He doesn't want you to do it. So do it if for no other reason than spite. Do it even when you feel nothing. Do it even when you feel cold. Do it even when you feel abandoned. Do it even when you feel like you're not making any progress at all. You feel like you're not making progress. It's because the devil's telling you you're not making progress. He doesn't want you to see what he sees. So be encouraged. Okay? All right. Well, we've gone past our hour here, so let's close with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Meet it is in truth to bless thee, O Theotokos, who art ever blessed and all blameless, and the Mother of our God, more honorable than the cherubim, and more glorious without compare than the seraphim, who without corruption gave us birth to God the Word. Verily, Theotokos, we magnify thee. The blessing of the Lord and his mercy be upon you through his grace and love of man, always, now, and ever, and unto ages of ages. Next week, before we shut off, next week is the final installment, and we talk about sex and marriage. Sex and marriage, like the old Frank Sinatra song. Oh, no, that. Sorry. Okay. Good night, everybody.